Alrighty, lots of people still filing in, but welcome to this special New York Jewish Week conversation with members of the Joyva family. My name is Gabe Friedman. I am Director of Editorial Experiences at 70 Faces Media, which includes the New York Jewish Week. And having met members of this family and toured their factory last year, I can safely say you are all in for a real treat, pun intended or not, that's up to you. Um, just a couple of logistical things. We'll be on for about an hour. You should all feel free to put questions and comments that you have for the family members in the Zoom chat. And the last 10, 15 minutes of the hour, I will relay as many of them as I can. Um, and just a reminder, this is a very civil topic, but let's keep all our questions and comments civil. If you happen to miss in the sign up on the sign up form, one of you will be winning a basket full of Joyva treats. I'm going to randomly select a couple of names here, and we'll email the winner. Um, totally chosen randomly from a randomizer thing that I have up. And if you're the winner, you'll get an email from me probably tomorrow. And we'll get on to sending you the goods. All right, so the last thing I wanted to say is this event is free because of your support, your donations throughout the year to Seven Faces Media and our many brands, and also by buying tickets to our many paid classes that I'm expanding now through our many brands. And I'm going to drop a link to a site that has a bunch of class offerings. If you're interested in any of them or have questions, you feel free to email me. I'm also going to put my email in the chat and just open myself up to you all. So I'd love to hear from you if you have questions about that, or if you don't get the recording of this the next tomorrow or the day after, if you have any glitches, let me know. I'm your point man. So let me just admit a bunch more people here. It's a great crowd. I'm going to let Sandy Weiner, Richard Radutsky, if I'm saying, correct me if I'm wrong, or if I'm saying your name wrong, and Ben Radutsky. I'm going to let them introduce themselves and the Joyva family, Joyva company really quickly before we get into our fun historical talk. So, and maybe if you guys, as you go around, note your favorite Joyva product also. Sandy, you want to start?
Sure. So I'm Sandy Weiner, although I definitely answer to Wiener because people make the mistake all the time.
Apologies.
No, it's okay. It's quite all right. So I am a third generation owner, and I've been at Joyva for about 35 years. I joined about a year and a half after Richard did, when he decided to come into Joyva. It made it very appealing for me because I felt like, I could work with a contemporary, a family member, and also a very nice guy and a very funny guy. And, but all kidding aside, I mean, it was, I love my grandfather and I love my uncles, but it was a little intimidating, I think, to potentially work with just, the older generation. So I've basically been there since college. And yeah, as far as, other interests, I like to play tennis, I ski, I like to go to New York Rangers games. And yeah.
What's your favorite Joyva product?
I would have to say the chocolate covered halva with crushed almonds.
Good choice. Yeah, we'll have to send them to all the participants.
Is that the new one? Is that the new product that I gotta taste?
We'll talk about what's coming down the pike. That's
okay, great.
Definitely. But yeah, thank you, Sandy. My name is Richard Radutsky. I am third generation, worked with my father and my uncles for 30-something years. Yeah, it's been an unbelievable experience working in a family business. We can get into the details later. I'm sure Gabe is going to have a bunch of questions. But there is nothing like, and for those that are out there that may know this or not know this, I think being in a family business is certainly a unique thing. And it's something where you wear a lot of hats, and you're willing to wear a lot of hats, and you want to wear a lot of hats. And I think probably, and then I'll send it over to Ben, I think the most precious lesson that we learned was not how to make a good jelly ring. It wasn't how to make good halva. It wasn't the technical side of the business. And I know this sounds corny, but it really was about being kind and decent and true to your word. And my father and my uncles taught us by example just to be nice. Say please, thank you, shake someone's hand, look someone in the eye. And that art is not so present anymore, especially in today's business world. Yes, we have to evolve. Yes, we can't depend on that only. Yes, we have to have attorneys. Yes, we have to have contracts. But the fact that we saw my dad and my uncles shake someone's hand and look them in the eye and keep their word was the most valuable lesson in the entire world. And we can talk about
Why?
how we're evolving, but to me, that's it. And I get choked up talking about it, and I apologize in advance, but I'm sure I'll be crying a couple of more times during tonight's Zoom. But it's incredible, and thank you all for joining us. It's really an honor, to tell you the truth. I'll send it over to Ben.
Oh, thank you. And that's why family businesses endure and are so beloved. So that was really sweet. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. I'm Ben. I'm Richard's son. So that would make me fourth generation here at Joyva. My mouthful of a title there is Director of Strategic Innovation and Development. It's essentially my arrival here about 5 or 6 years ago coincided with an extensive need for innovation and strategic development. So, we did a lot of modernizing. We did a lot of, working with, computer programs to do some of our, more basic operational stuff. But on a larger level, I arrived at a pivotal time when we were kind of working on figuring out, what Joyva is and what Joyva should be moving forward into the future. And in order to do a kind of rebrand like that, we kind of have to get down into the nitty-gritty and figure out, well, what is our brand to begin with? What is the message we want to share with everyone? And like my dad was just saying, that love, that care, that heart-to-heart, person-to-person relationship is really at the core of our brand. It's at the core of us as people, and it's at the core of our brand. And we really wanted to share that forward. And I think most of kind of my time here has been helping to hone that brand and spread that brand and share the love and the joy that, is inherent even to the title of our company. So it's, my dad said, it's been an honor, it's been a pleasure, and it's been very exciting to kind of have this opportunity to take, the heart and soul of this heartful and soulful brand into the future.
Yeah, that's really sweet, Ben. You're going to go with your favorite product. Sorry, my favorite product is the cherry marshmallow twists. I know that's a little fringe, but that's my favorite product. Yours?
Yeah. Mine is a good old-fashioned jelly ring.
There you go. There you go.
Thank you.
Just want to say one other thing about what Ben said. When he came into the business 5 years ago, Sandy and I had obviously a similar experience coming to work with the older generation. And Sandy and I did not battle with the older generation. They created an unbelievably successful and beautiful company. And Sandy and I did not have the DNA to say, guys, I think we should do it this way, or I think we should do it that way. Yes, when we were more comfortable, and yes, when we were there for a couple of decades, we decided to sort of speak our mind a little more. But I think I told you this before, Gabe. I have a lot of friends that are in family businesses that don't talk to their dads and their moms and their families. That was never going to happen. It doesn't matter how much my uncles and my father were a little bit skeptical of change. I think their reticence for change when we were younger, I think Sandy and I thought it was a little foolish. But now looking back, and they're all gone now, I think that the stability that they supplied and the structure that they provided is just incalculable, you know?
So
And
you guys have gone ahead and you're getting at a lot of good parts of the story. But why don't we start at the beginning for everyone?
go
So
ahead.
who I know, you've given me the story and but let's start at square one. Um, it's not just, it didn't sort of appear out of nowhere one day, this enormous company. It started with one guy from Eastern Europe with a cart selling halva on the Lower East Side. So I wonder if you could, oh, here we go. I'm going to share this screen for a second. Yeah, remove that. Does everyone, okay, there we go. Let me know if anyone doesn't see that. I think it's working correctly now. So yeah, tell us about Nathan and what you know about his immigration story and how he got rolling. And my main question off of the beginning is, you're going to say that things really picked up for him, relatively quickly, I think. Was he one of the first people to really sell halva on the streets of Lower East Side? Was he like a pioneer in that? Is that why? So you're shaking your head. So why don't you
Yeah,
someone
I
give us.
mean, I'll start and then Ben can take over. And Sandy actually came up with the phrase America's original halva when we were discussing our rebrand. And we discovered that we actually could trademark and patent America's original halva because Gabe, like you said, he was actually the first one to sell halva here in the United States. He had a recipe for halva, which, by the way, is an ancient Turkish confection. Halva means sweet meat in Turkish.
Mm.
And he brought that recipe over here. I don't think he realized 117 years later that the recipe he had on a little card, making halva out of his garage on the Lower East Side of New York, would have blossomed into a factory here in Bushwick, Brooklyn, and with that recipe and with the immigrant population, there must have been a built-in customer base. And he went from the garage to a small factory in Brooklyn to a larger factory in Brooklyn. And amazingly enough, did innovations back then that were probably revolutionary. Tahini is a main ingredient in halva. And then he decided, along with my father and my uncles, that tahini could live on its own. Maybe we can make that a retail product. So back in 1907, when he came over here without his wife, she came later on, he started this business. It sounds like a Hollywood movie, but he did it. Ben has done a lot of sort of archival work, the whole ancestry.com thing.
What country? Where? Remind me where they're from exactly.
Nathan came from a little town named Obuchov, which is outside Kiev in Ukraine. And like my dad was saying, he came over in 1906, straight to the Lower East Side. And yeah, started selling his halva on the push cart. And it kind of just picked up from there. Like my dad said, he had the natural customer base, and the demand kept growing. He moved to Brooklyn, early 1910s, to a small factory at 90 Meserole Street, where they were for a few years. And then they moved to a larger factory that they built in a different part, which is the building we're in today.
And I think Farah can share a picture for all of you. We are in Bushwick, Brooklyn, in the same factory that Nathan built from scratch in 1931. And you will see two pictures side by side of, there it is. So on the left or on the right, I'm not sure because we're screen sharing, but you can tell which one is the older one and which one is the newer photo. But that's the same building on the same corner. The only thing different, two things. One, they had to take out the windows. And two, if you can look closely, the name of the company was called Independent Halva and Candy.
Mm-hmm.
And in 1950, we changed the name to Joyva, and Sandy Weiner can tell you why that is.
Yeah, so so my grandfather, Harry, had two daughters, and Rosalind and Ellen, and my mom, Rosalind's middle name was Joy. And they took the Va from Halva and her middle name, and voila, they created Joyva.
It's a great name.
So
Yeah, that could be a Jeopardy question one day.
Oh, I'm gonna hold on a second. I'm gonna spotlight us again here. So the halva and candies reminded me that I was reading. What else? What other things after the halva cart? What other things were you making in the factory from the beginning? And that changed when Joyva started.
I think it took him about 20 years to branch out from halva. He made halva in numerous different shapes and forms. Bulk halva. We made something called Joyva Sultans. We made something called Joyva Crowns. They put it in cans. They were selling it at Woolworth. It was a huge, expansive line of halva. There it is in the can. That can is literally from 1935, 1940.
Amazing.
I think Ben and the wooden box down below, that's how we used to pack the halva in bulk. And you can see that it's called Independent Halva and Candy. We have a few of those boxes left. I'm not sure that we could pack halva in that wooden box today. I'm not sure the FDA would approve, but it happens to be with the tongue and groove and the design. It's so beautiful. And it's actually informs what we're doing every day today. And we can talk about this later, Gabe, about how the past informs the present and the future, which, by the way, happens in everything, not just in the candy business. I think it happens especially in the Jewish culture. This generation to generation thing is extremely vital and important. And it's something that we live every day. Yes, we get to see it in packaging and we get to see it in candy and we get to see it in the evolution, but it's really amazing to live it every day. But yeah, that's how Joyva, the name Joyva, came about. And I think, when was it? In the early 40s, he started making rings.
Well, yeah. I mean, shortly after he moved to Brooklyn the first time and had, a factory proper to work with, that's when he started making marmalades, kind of like jelly and white layers. I've seen pictures and heard people talk about them all the time. And then he moved on from that to covering them in chocolate and calling it a gel bar. And that was essentially the beginning of having more than just halva. And it's anyone's guess as to how he actually came up with the idea of let's make these jelly treats and cover them in chocolate. But as we know now, it was a good call. And yeah,
Yeah.
just moving forward, he kind of developed those ideas, added some marshmallow to the mix, and down the line, when they got a new factory and new machines, that's when the jelly ring started to come into fruition with the different shape that was, possible with new machinery and stuff. So yeah, it kind of just naturally progressed from the marmalade.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you also told me at some point, or maybe I read it, one of you quoted an article saying that another reason it was so popular is because the treats and the food being served at like Jewish celebrations and um, weddings, bar mitzvahs, and within the Jewish community was very bad. There was a real like hole in the market there. It was what I wonder if you could relay a bit what of the Lower East Side in Brooklyn at the time. What maybe this is a good time to talk about the four Nathan's four sons. What their life was like, how, you know, were they really closely embedded in the Jewish community and they saw that the snacks and treats were really bad and that's how they capitalized on that. Like what memories and stories do you have from that time?
So there's a picture of the of my dad who's over on the end, and my Uncle Mickey and my Uncle Harry and my Uncle Alex. Sandy and I worked with them, like I said, for three and a half decades. Um, I will say that all of them um, worked well into their 90s, came to work every day, were incestuously close, and looked out for each other. I don't think Sandy and I, and Sandy, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think I'd ever seen them cross with each other. Maybe they disagree about strategy or what to do or innovation but there was never a time that Sandy and I saw them fight or argue. Which again is one of those crazy lessons that you just see by watching, right, Sandy? I mean,
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, I think the only time I saw it was actually out of protection was I remember sort of Harry, getting frustrated like that your father was still, running around the factory in his 80s, because he felt like he needed to take it easy.
that's true.
But Harry was about 11 years older than Richard's father, and Harry would have done the exact same thing that Richard's father Milton was doing. So even if they were annoyed, it was just really I think out of love.
Yeah. To say they were old school is an understatement. There could be 10 feet of snow on the Interborough Parkway, or as we all know it today, the Jackie Robinson Parkway. But they came to work every day. Rain, snow, sleet, it didn't matter. And they had this work ethic and I think they also had this companionship. It wasn't just let's go to work and make candy. I think they needed each other and loved each other. And fortunately, those lessons have held today. Me and Sandy and Ben, it's all about what's next and what's exciting and how can we help each other, and hopefully that can continue for another 100 years. I think I think their relationship was something really amazing. And with Sandy and I working with them for 35 years, like I said, we got the courage later on to say, you know what, guys, maybe we can use. Oh, I remember, Sandy, one of our biggest arguments with my dad and my uncles, we had already been there 20 years, was convincing them that we needed a fax machine.
Yeah.
And at the time, that's how we got orders. with a fax machine. And they were like, wait a minute. Do you know how much a fax machine is? Do we really need a fax machine? Huh? Are you guys being spendthrifts now? But we actually convinced them that the fax machine was important. I think that was the first argument we actually won.
I can't wait to
I would say
ask.
that's correct.
I can't wait till we get to Ben's joining, and we'll get to that and some of the things that I remember him saying. So along the way, so everything, success was relatively quick. I've talked to a lot of people who own businesses and small businesses and brands that have, ballooned into be very big. And some of the craziest stories are the moments where you have no idea, but 30 years ago, like they were actually on the brink of bankruptcy or something happened, or were there any crazy stories like a vat of halva explode, like a machine exploding, or were any trials and tribulations that were kind of crazy along the way that you learned and built from, either your time or before your time, do you know?
I mean, I don't recall anything like that. Maybe Richard does, or or Ben. I don't think there was anything major in the factory. I think, if anything, it was just it was the opposite, where they were conservative in a way that, like, the business grew, but it didn't have to grow like crazy. They were conservative, but they were smart. They ran a very lean factory in terms of like number of employees. They were really good about running a business and being, profitable enough. I think they took chances back in the 50s and 60s more in terms of advertising and everything. And when Richard and I came, we thought things were maybe like, a bit stale and stodgy and needed a refresh. But we kind of, again, looking back, realized that they really were incredible innovators.
Yeah.
The fact that we
Yeah,
still
go ahead.
have halva equipment that's basically, it was created for us, and it's still working. It's still basically the same equipment. So don't even quite know how they did that. But, again, now that we're running the business, that sounds like quite an undertaking.
Yeah, I would say I totally agree with Sandy. I will say that one of the major sort of nutty stories is that we had a factory across the street from the halva factory that they built in the early 60s, maybe, right? In the early 60s, we built a sesame seed processing facility across the street where we processed the sesame seed and then ground it into tahini. But then they had to figure out a way to get the tahini over to the other factory where we were making halva. Well, why don't we put a massive tahini main pipe under the street and
No
pump
way.
over the tahini to the other factory?
Oh my goodness, I love
So
that.
they lobbied the city, and we still pay, I think, $1,800 a year for permission for, it's almost like a water main. You know, when you see a water main break in New York City because the pipes are so old, literally this is a tahini main with thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds of tahini being pumped under the Brooklyn street.
I didn't know that was still that across the street building is still there then. It's still
Well, that building no longer exists. However, at the time, they came up with this, excuse my language, fakakta idea to pump tahini under the street to bring it into the halva factory. And I remember thinking to myself, whatever that phrase is, something is the mother of invention. I think that what you said, Gabe, is true. There are these times in a business where you are, well, what do we do now? We built this tahini factory, but we have to make the halva, but the halva's, 2,000 feet away, a full city block away. What do we do? Do we bring it over in drums? Well, that'll take too long. And they They created a tahini main. So it's just one of their examples of, if you can think it and do it, then let's try it. And Sandy's right. They were conservative. They were not the most ambitious people in the world. They had opportunities to buy real estate in Brooklyn 60, 70 years ago. They actually did have a real estate company for a year in Brooklyn. They owned townhouses in Williamsburg. And then one day they were like, you know what? We're not in the real estate business. We're in the candy business. So they gave up all of that real estate in Brooklyn. And I'm not sitting here saying, oh, that's a lost opportunity. Oh, can you imagine how amazing it would be if we owned half of Brooklyn? That's not the point. The point is they knew their lane. And they wanted to concentrate on that lane. And Sandy's right that even though they were conservative, they were prudent and amazing. There I go crying again. Damn it.
Thank you for that. The tahini main reminded me, a couple people were asking what actually halva, what else besides the sesame goes into halva, and how is it made? Because I didn't quite think about how it was made till I was in there seeing it. Kind of remarkable. I wonder if one of you could just briefly sum that up.
Go ahead.
Ben, want to do it?
Go ahead, Sandy.
Okay. So, and I'm not sure if we have some pictures to put up, but basically, if we don't, and for those of you who haven't seen any of it, we have these old copper basins. The tahini comes in from a tank on the top floor. We put a certain amount of tahini in there. Then we heat up sugar, corn syrup, and egg whites. And it comes out sort of like a hot white taffy. We pour that into the copper basin. And that's where the mixing process starts. So a very strong guy with a big paddle literally starts to pull apart that taffy into strings. You want to pull them apart, which is what gives the halva body. You don't want them to break, otherwise it loses its body. So you do that for a couple of minutes. Then
I think we may have a picture of the halva on the basin somewhere. Yeah.
Okay. Then we put then we pour some responsibly sourced palm oil into the mix. Two guys now with gloves on start to pound it and knead it. Eventually, some more tahini goes on. Some more mixing goes on by hand. The basin goes up and down, and then it gets cut into pieces. It gets put into tins if it's going into bars, and then there you go. So you can see there the first part of the halva mixing process with the paddle. It goes into a refrigerated ice box at least overnight. There you go. So you can see that being put in the tin. You can see the mixing in the basin. And then it gets, wrapped into whatever it is. So it's a very old school process, but most halva makers around the world who have been doing it forever in Greece and Turkey and Israel make it in a very similar way.
The whole fact, I mean, from the halva to the chocolate covering the marshmallows, every piece of it felt so old school and amazing. And
yeah, there's a picture of Ben. I think we can pull it up. There's a picture of my Uncle Mickey on the halva floor, on the halva production floor, about 65, 70 years ago. And there is a picture of Benjamin Radutsky in exactly the same spot. There it is. So you can see my Uncle Mickey, and then you see Ben literally 65, 70 years later. If you guys look closely, it's the same beam. It's the same ceiling. It's the same kettles. Now, obviously, we've repaired them and have upgraded certain systems. But, I mean, we've had employees, Gabe, and for those listening and watching, we've had employees there for 40, 50 years. They could swear that when they come in the morning, they can hear my father and my uncle. They're not, and they're deeply committed employees. Some of them are very religious. They're not being supernatural. They can feel the presence of the generation that was there before. And so much so that they tell Sandy and I and Ben, they go, guys, I'm telling you, I heard your father this morning when I came into work. You know, I heard his voice, or I felt his presence. And you can't fluff that off. You can't say, oh, you're crazy, or oh, thank you. No, it's such a part of the fabric of what we're doing. And as you can see, Ben standing in the same spot 75 years later, it's like insane, you know? But more importantly, how do we go, you know, what do we do for the next 70 years? You know, you can only, what got us here is amazing. What's going to get us to the next level, to the next generation? Everyone listening here tonight, I'm sure, has a beloved story about our products. And Gabe, you can certainly tell us when we can talk about why we evolved the brand or what we were thinking. But my only point now is to say that cherishing the past completely and totally helped us direct how we wanted to live in the future. And if we did something, we have to keep everyone on this call tonight, everyone in this beautiful event tonight, we have to keep all of you in mind, all of you, because this is how we got there. You're the reason. And if we come out and all of a sudden do something crazy with our formula, or if we do something crazy with our packaging, we don't want to alienate the consumers and the people that got us here. So it was an incredibly difficult and enormous responsibility to evolve responsibly.
The last thing I want, before we get into
Go
that,
ahead.
the last thing I wanted to ask about, Ben talking, Ben's story of joining the company. And I think you said that there wasn't a real working website or something. I just want to hear your, you know, your story of coming into the fold.
Can I just,
and
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I just want to, I just want him to be nice. That's all.
I will be very nice. You know, it's
ahead.
my family too. Yeah, I mean, when I came to the company, which was about 6 years ago now, like you just said, we did not have a working website. It was a website that looked like it started to be built in the 90s and somebody just forgot about it. So that was one of my first tasks, and is kind of, you know, a little bit of like a microcosm of the type of task that I've been kind of taking on here. So we turned, you know, a nothing website that was essentially a blurb about our history and a little, you know, have a hell of a day. And now we have a working website with our whole history and product locator. And, you know, I mean, it's, you know, we're all fancy and futuristic and stuff.
Did you have a tough time convincing Sandy and I of
that one was one of the easier arguments I had. You know, it's interesting. My dad keeps talking about, you know, how they were kind of scared to butt heads with the older generation a bit. I came into the company with the attitude of, I think my quote to my dad was, "Don't be scared of being scared." You know, it was a crossroads for the company, you know, beyond, oh boy, we need a website. It was, oh boy, we need a larger picture of who we are, for ourselves, for the world. And it was the beginning of this new undertaking that, you know, is a passionate undertaking for us, and a really interesting exercise in self-reflection. And it's been a really great opportunity. And I'm grateful that I've been able to approach these kind of forks in the road and these pivotal moments in the story of where we'll be going through the future. I'm grateful that I've been able to approach those moments with the appreciation and approval and embracing of the older generation. So it's been an interesting, almost opposite dynamic for my arrival at the company. They try
Remind me
to
real,
preserve the past. I'm trying to secure the future.
remind me what were you working in before? You
Um,
were
so
technologically
I,
savvy, I mean.
yeah, I was in college for 5 years. I spent time studying new media, so everything from website building to computer animation. So I'm well versed in computers, computer software, anything like that. Um, and then I spent a year out of college at a small branding firm, getting some experience in that world. And then I had this opportunity to bring the tech, bring the branding, and
Yeah, kind of a
bring my
perfect combo.
childhood love. So, yeah.
Very cool.
By the
So,
way,
yeah,
just sorry, just chiming in for 1 second. It's so funny to hear. I mean, I know this is just how things go in time and with generations, but it's like Richard and I were the youngest, we were the younger generation, like waiting and waiting. And then all of a sudden, like overnight, we were the older generation. It's, it's like happens. It just basically happened in no time.
Correct.
yeah. So, Farah, I wonder if you could put images of the new um, logo and some of the new products. It's such a sleek redesign, but like I wrote an article a few years ago for the JTA on how Jewish delis, let me share this real quick, um, were, sort of using nostalgia and making it cool again. Putting having their interiors be very like sleek and modern, but like having photos of their great grandparents on the wall and just like the mixing
Mm-hmm.
of the two. And I think this is your version of that. I think it's just a perfect like you get the jelly ring in there, but it feels like a cool modern design. Um, and you have the Brooklyn 1907, I think is the year on there. So how many like versions of things did you have to go through? How arduous of a process was it to get to this like
It,
perfect final
yeah.
version?
It's very nice of you to say that it's a perfect version, but there were a lot of iterations. I will say the beginning of this journey did start with a courageous decision on our part, our family's part, to bring in someone on the executive level for the first time in the history of the company who would shepherd this new evolution of the brand, and that's Farah Besner. Farah Besner came to us how many years ago?
Right around when I
Yeah,
arrived.
right around
So,
5 years
yeah.
ago. And Farah, and whoever's interested in looking Farah up, and I know she's on the Zoom now and helping us out, but she's had decades and decades of experience with Nabisco and Swedish Fish and Kraft and Sour Patch Kids. I mean, a veteran and a superstar in the candy and food world. And as luck would have it, she had left the big company, big billion-dollar company, and we met, and she felt that this Brooklyn-born family business was ripe for growth, and she felt that it was ripe for an evolution. And she really should get a ton of credit for where we ended up in our new brand. And for those of you, again, that are listening, there are a few things that you want to do when you are rebranding or refreshing your brand. And the most important thing is to make sure that the people that know us will still know us when they go to the store. You want to make sure that when you evolve your graphics and your brand, that people still know that it's Joyva. So we created that beautiful logo, that beautiful bow tie logo. As many of you will notice, our jelly rings and marshmallow twists have had this ubiquitous magenta and blue. Well, we couldn't change the colors because then people would be confused. So we leaned into the things. As you can see here, that's what it looked like before. And I don't know if you can sharing this yet, but that was the magenta and the blue, which we had to retain. But then the jelly rings and the new design were inspired by the jelly rings going down the belt of the chocolate machine, because they all line up in a nice, we may have a picture of that somewhere, but and again, the same thing with the marshmallow twists. So we wanted to lean into who we were. The Joyva logo kind of looks like a little bit of a smile. It's kind of joyful. We wanted to call out Brooklyn 1907, which wasn't before. And the other thing that was easy was that in some of our past packaging, we had different logos. Sometimes the Sultan with the hat had a jewel and sometimes he didn't. Sometimes the Joyva had different font. So we really wanted to clean it up. And many of you may know, there you go. Those are our different logos that all existed at the same time. And we decided on the one here on the right, which sort of is simple and beautiful and powerful, but also recognizable. It was really interesting study in how we got to where we got. And I will say that we utilized our consumer base. We ran things by tried and true Joyva consumers. What's on the screen now was the inspiration for the new logo. We used to have, back in the early 40s, we used to have billboards in Times Square. And the graphic design company that we hired was very moved by this sort of font and this logo. And that was sort of the jumping off point. And again, a ton of iterations. At the same time that we redesigned our packaging, we also redesigned the inside of the package, which was the product itself. And we took out artificial flavors and colors. We used responsibly sourced palm oil. We made cleaner ingredients. So it wasn't just what it looked like on the outside, but also what it was on the inside. But again, we had to be careful, because if you change one thing in a Joyva product, believe me, we hear about it. Because we have such a loyal customer base, like everyone on the Zoom tonight. That's the responsibility. And Sandy and I and Ben and Farah, we welcome the calls. We welcome the emails. We welcome the handwritten letters that say, you know, the marshmallow twist I had this year, it wasn't quite as vanilla tasting as it was last year.
We, of course, got a couple of these in the Zoom chat I'm going through. I wish we had more time to dig more into that. I think you gave a great summary there. We'll probably go a few minutes over 9. If anyone has to log off, that's fine. I'll get to chat questions in a second. I just want to give you a chance to say also, you know, obviously you felt like the brand was a bit stale. You wanted to rebrand and reach out to different demographics. Like, are there other, maybe you could briefly go over, you know, some of the new products you're planning, and are there other ideas for expanding into different things, places, markets, demographics? Like what is like sort of the end goal of your push that you have going here?
Um,
I know it's a big question too, but
yeah, no, I mean, I'll just say one thing and then Sandy, you can go. What you said before, Gabe, about, you know, about this connection to the past and nostalgia and what's familiar. I think the main thing we wanted to do in the refresh was, there we made a list of what does old mean? Old can be stale and dusty and marginal, but old could also be classic and authentic and nostalgic. And those, even going through that intellectual exercise, allows us to make sure that we don't lose what is classic and old and vintage about our brand. We have to maintain that. So that was a lot of the driving force behind the rebrand, to make it almost look like, and maybe one of the best compliments we ever got, and we got this more than once. We got this a few times, many times, was, did you guys bring back packaging that you used to have? Which is a testament to exactly what we were trying to do. To not make it foreign, to make it familiar, but to make it just fresh enough, just new enough. So yeah. And
so what about that almond bar that I tried that was phenomenal?
yes. So we have been we make a product called chocolate covered halva with crushed almonds on it. But we are working on making it into a sort of a gift box at the moment. And to because we find that halva product is very universal. We give a chocolate covered halva bar with crushed almonds on it to someone who's never tried halva, and they're like, what is this? Oh my goodness, I love that. And they could be Jewish, they could not be Jewish, they could be old, they could be young. And we're discovering, especially now with the changing consumer tastes out there, that we think the consumers are kind of up for anything, to tell you the truth. Not anything, but I think if we come out with certain innovations that are in keeping with, consistent with who we are and what we are, then we have this like built-in audience that's ready and willing to try new Joyva stuff,
So you that almond thing is already sold. I'm looking
Um,
online right now to try to find it because I need to order
It's
some.
not being sold yet. We sell it in
Okay.
bulk at the moment, but it should be out in the next few months. But when it is, we will distribute free samples, I promise.
Well, thank you so much. I want to get to some of these questions from the chat before we end.
Yeah, Gabe, let me just
Go ahead,
shout out one thing. Please, everyone, follow us at Joyva1907 on Instagram. We post a lot, so again, part of us moving forward.
Yeah.
I can put the link in here. You're reminding me.
Okay.
Thank you, Sandy. Yeah. It's just funny to use words like Instagram and website and social media and all that stuff, as it relates to this 115-year-old company. But in reality, we have to embrace it. And it's what Ben said. You know what I mean?
Ben's like, you guys, Instagram. You brought up non-Jews. I think someone asked the interesting question. Do you have any idea what percentage of your customer base is Jewish and non-Jewish?
It's a good question. I would imagine anecdotally, like everyone here, I would imagine a large percentage of our customer base is Jewish. However, something like tahini, which we now sell at retail, is very mainstream. And tahini is being used by chefs and cooks and home chefs, and it's becoming a pantry staple. So, and halva is having a similar trajectory as well, where these products that were once exclusive to maybe a certain ethnic group or culture has now expanded. And we see that with a lot of foods now. So yes, I would say the majority of our customer base is Jewish, but as we grow and become more mainstream, there are people out there that are not Jewish that just want something that tastes good, that has some value, and strangely enough, I don't know, it's still made by hand in Brooklyn, New York. You know, it's like, yeah.
And
It's
has been in
hipster gold
Brooklyn
right
for a
there.
long time.
Yeah.
So, you
Yeah.
know, there are also, like, we've encountered a bunch of people totally not Jewish, not even remotely involved in the community, but grew up in Brooklyn. So just grew up eating Joyva, you know? I mean, we've met a bunch of people who haven't even heard of Passover, but grew up eating jelly rings.
Correct.
So that exists too, just because we've been in Brooklyn since, you know,
Correct.
the
I'm
20s.
sure many of you know Ralph's Italian ices. Well, they have a jelly ring ices. So, and that's just an Italian from Brooklyn who started Ralph's ice cream. But he's like, well, what can I put in my authentic Brooklyn product? Another authentic Brooklyn product. So it's an interesting question. And thank you for sharing it. Yeah.
Well, I just quickly looked up Ralph's to see what their website game is like, and you guys have left them in the dust. So, um, speaking of people in the community, I feel like this is a tricky question, but so many people asked it. Maybe you can explain why it's difficult to do tours for the public at the factory because people are just dying to see it.
Yeah, I think we're going to get a little more. I think my cousin Sandy is, well, I'm not sure if he's going to be mad at me for saying this, but I think we can be a little more lax, maybe, if there are certain situations where we can have people at the factory. But it is a working factory. There are FDA regulations. There are also insurance regulations. So if someone comes and falls into about a halva, you know, that wouldn't be too good. But, you know, once in a while, if it's at the right time, like we had a school class of, I think, ninth graders or something, you know, come to the factory one day. And I think we may be able to start bringing here and there a few people. If we decided to really open it up for tours, that would be a whole different endeavor. But it is a thrill to come to the factory. It is. And if you go to our website, though, there are videos of almost everything we make and do in the factory, literally. And we can thank Ben for that.
And some people are messaging me, "Oh, you're gonna not get to my question." I'm not gonna get to every single one of the hundreds of questions, but you can see that these guys are very responsive, normal guys. They're encouraging you to go to their Instagram. I'm sure you could DM their Instagram. They wanted me to mention also, I forgot to ask about, Richard and Sandy, do you guys take calls from people? You're not just running the show. You said you will sit with people for 40 minutes and listen to their gripes about the packaging and the quality of the chocolate, etc. So,
yes,
you know,
we do not have
feel free to.
Yeah, we don't have a
Go ahead.
dedicated customer service department, so we all take turns taking calls, answering emails, whatever it is, and we will spend as much time on the phone, or almost as much time on the phone as most people want.
Yeah. By the way,
happy to hear
it's not
stories
just-
and
Yeah. It's not just, it's really a benefit for Sandy and I and Ben and Farah to listen and absorb what our consumers are saying. And sometimes they're celebrating us and sometimes they're disappointed. But what a gift it is for owners of a company to be on the pulse like that. You know, it's not just anecdotal. Yes, there are ways to get data, you know. We sell on Amazon or someone buys something online, you know where they live and who they are. But in terms of hearing and listening to what people like and don't like, I mean, it's a miracle. They feel free. All of you people on this Zoom should feel free to email and call. We will answer your call. We will talk to you. We will engage with you. And we do it because, again, it sounds corny, but without you folks, you know, we're not doing what we're doing. The fact that you trust our brand and products at your holiday tables or your bar mitzvahs or at your weddings or as a gift to someone, it's insane. And yeah, it's crazy.
Not so crazy when you taste it.
We're
You
so
how good it is.
we're just so appreciative, you know?
I think maybe one last question that I'm also fascinated by. Where do the sesame seeds, where do you source the sesame seeds from?
Mostly like from Africa, you know, like Sudan,
Wow.
Nigeria. You know, there have been times that's where they've been from South America.
Mm-hmm.
So a little bit of a variety.
I thought you were going to say like some middleman in Bayonne, New Jersey or something like that. Very cool.
And sesame seeds
Domestic...
have different flavors and characters based on where they come from. It's a lot like coffee,
yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, we look for a certain type of profile, you know, in the seed. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much. This was so fun. Everyone's comments were a mix of nostalgia and praise for you guys and the products, and it was just really wholesome and lovely and fun to hear the history as always. And if you haven't had one of their products in a while, I highly recommend ordering some. Just about, I mean, anything is, you know, incredible. Tastes the way it has for a long time for a reason. Treat yourself, not just on Passover, you know.
And if you can't, yes, and if you can't find it, or if there's a product that isn't near you for some reason, please email customer service at joyva.com.
I'll put that.
Yeah, at joyva.com, and please let us know anything. Let us know if you can't find the product. We'll get it to you. We'll tell you where to get it. Please, please, please.
We had people in here from Toronto and Australia, the ones that caught my eye as I was scrolling, who were asking for it. So
that's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Well, thank you all for being here tonight too. And we went a few minutes over. You'll all get the recording. You can watch it again, and I'll put as many links to as many things as I can remember. Thank you, Richard, Sandy, and Ben. Thank you, Farah, for the help. Yeah, I can't say enough. Thank you, guys.
Great. Thank you, Gabe.
It was truly a pleasure.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
really an honor that all of you gathered on a Sunday night like this just to talk about this. It's really amazing. Thank you so much.
Oh, no problem. And I hope to see some of you future event or talk. So see you soon.
All right.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Good night, all.
Good night.